The lake house had a wraparound porch, a fire pit by the water, and a kayak tied to the dock that nobody ever used. My mother described it the way she described everything she wanted, in a voice that made you feel like you'd already missed something wonderful just by standing there listening. She'd been talking about this trip for 4 months. The Hendersons' rental up in Lake Tahoe, 2 weeks in July, the whole family together for the first time since my grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. She kept saying it like a prayer. The whole family. All of us together. I was washing dishes the first time I heard the number. "We got a great deal," she said, setting her phone face down on the counter. 4 spots. The Hendersons only had 4 left in the big cabin. I turned off the faucet. "There are 5 of us." She looked at me the way she always looked at me when I said something she didn't want to deal with. "Well, your father and I, and your brother, and your sister." She picked up her phone again. "You know how close your sister and I have been this year. She really needs this." I stood there with wet hands and counted. 4 minus 4 equals 0. 0 for me. "I could look into other rentals nearby," I said. "I could pay my own way. Honey, it's not about money." She waved her hand. "The Hendersons' place only sleeps 4 comfortably. You understand." I did understand. I just wish I'd understood sooner, like 8 years sooner, when I first moved back home after college to help out for a little while. Let me back up. I'm 31 years old. I have a degree in accounting and a job I've had for 6 years at a mid-sized logistics firm downtown. I'm good at my job. I'm organized and careful, and I don't miss deadlines, and those same qualities are exactly why my family decided, somewhere along the way, that I was the one who could be counted on for everything. I moved back home when I was 23. My father had just had knee surgery. My mother was working part-time and said she was overwhelmed. My brother was 19 and in community college and going through a rough patch. My sister was 25 and between jobs again and sleeping in her old room. It made sense for me to come back. Just temporarily. Temporarily lasted 8 years. Here is what I paid for during those 8 years because I kept records. I am an accountant after all, and somewhere around year 3 I started writing things down, not out of resentment, just out of habit. The living room sectional, $3,400. My mother had seen it in a catalog and mentioned it twice and then mentioned it 7 more times until I ordered it online on a Sunday afternoon while eating cereal alone in my room. The refrigerator, the old one, made a grinding sound my father said gave him headaches. $1,100, delivered on a Wednesday, and my father said thank you once and then never mentioned it again. 4 years of internet service because my brother needed it for school and then needed it for gaming and then needed it for freelance work that I never saw produce any money. The dining room table, the washer, the dryer when the old one broke and my mother called me at work crying, the back fence when a storm knocked 2 panels down, my sister's car insurance for 11 months when she said she was between things. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I need you to understand that when my mother said it's not about money, what she actually meant was it's not about your money, which we have already decided belongs to us. The trip was in July, 6 weeks away when she told me. I didn't say anything else that night. I finished the dishes and went to my room and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. My room had the same furniture it had when I was 16, a twin bed with a maple headboard, a dresser with a sticky second drawer, a desk I'd long since stopped using for anything except a surface for my work bag and my library books. I lay back and looked at the ceiling and thought about the sectional downstairs, about the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, about the dining room table where my family would sit and talk about the lake house trip and what to pack. I thought about my sister. She had not paid rent in 4 years. She had not contributed to groceries in 3. She worked occasionally, a few months here, a few months there, and when she had money she spent it on things I won't catalog because it's not my business, except that it did become my business every time my mother called me and said things are tight this month, can you help? My sister was kind to me mostly. She wasn't cruel. She borrowed my sweaters and didn't always return them, and sometimes ate food I'd specifically bought for myself and left the empty container in the fridge, which is a particular kind of violation I have no words for. But she smiled at me easily and called me by a nickname only she used, and I loved her the way you love someone who has been in every memory of your whole life. Which is to say, Completely, helplessly, in a way that makes it very hard to be angry. It was still hard to be angry. But I was. I want to tell you exactly when I decided. It was a Thursday evening, about a week after my mother told me about the 4 spots. I was coming home from work. The commute is 40 minutes by train, and I usually use the time to read. But that night I was just staring out the window at the backs of other people's houses, laundry lines, patios, small gardens. I thought about a conversation I'd had with a coworker named, well, it doesn't matter, a woman in her 50s who'd done something similar, moved back to care for a parent, stayed longer than she meant to. She'd told me once, over bad vending machine coffee, that the thing nobody tells you is that your family doesn't actually need you to save them. They just need you to be available to be needed. There's a difference, she said, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'd thought about that conversation a lot in the years since. The train went underground and my reflection appeared in the dark window. I looked tired. I made a decision somewhere between the tunnel and my stop. Not a dramatic decision, not a burning bridges decision. Just a quiet one. The kind that feels less like a choice and more like finally doing arithmetic you've been avoiding. I was going to move out, and I was going to take everything I had paid for. I spent the next 4 weeks making arrangements. The first thing I did was call my friend Daphne, who I've known since junior year of college and who has always been the kind of person who responds to news with, "Okay, what do you need?" instead of, "Are you sure?" I told her what I was thinking. She was quiet for a moment. "The sectional 2?" she said. "The sectional 2. I know a guy with a truck," she said. The second thing I did was look at apartments. I had savings. I'd been careful, even while paying for so much else. Because I am an accountant and I understand compound interest, and I had also, somewhere in the back of my mind, always known this day would come. I found a 1-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my office. 2nd floor, hardwood floors, south-facing windows. Empty. Completely empty. Which meant I would need furniture. I had furniture. The third thing I did was go through the house quietly, on evenings when everyone else was watching television, and make a mental inventory. The sectional, the dining table and 4 chairs, the washer and dryer. The small kitchen appliances I'd bought over the years, the coffee maker, the stand mixer, the cast iron skillet I'd brought home from a Williams-Sonoma sale and my mother had immediately adopted as hers, my desk lamp, my bookshelves, the wireless router. I wrote it all down. The fourth thing I did was wait. The morning my family left for Lake Tahoe, my mother hugged me at the door and said she wished things had worked out differently with the cabin. She smelled like her same perfume. My father shook my head. He means to pat my shoulder but always misjudges, and said, "Hold down the fort." My brother was already in the car. My sister held on a beat longer than the others and whispered, "I'll bring you back something," and I said okay. I stood on the porch and watched the car back out of the driveway. I waved. When they turned the corner, I went inside and called Daphne. "They're gone," I said. "I'll be there in an hour," she said. She brought her cousin Felix and his friend whose name I never caught, and a 16-foot moving truck she'd reserved under her name. Daphne is organized in a different way than I am. I plan on paper, she plans by knowing exactly which calls to make and when. She showed up with coffee and a printed checklist I hadn't asked her to make. "I made a checklist," she said, handing me a cup. We started in the living room. The sectional came apart in 3 pieces, which I knew because I'd assembled it myself. Felix knew how to angle furniture through doorways. He'd worked for a moving company in college, and within 40 minutes the living room was empty. Just carpet and dent marks where the couch had been. A rectangle of slightly less faded flooring where the coffee table had stood. I went to the dining room next. The table had 6 screws in the legs, and I had the right screwdriver because I'd assembled that too. The chairs stacked easily. The kitchen took the longest. I wrapped the coffee maker in a dish towel I'd bought. The stand mixer went into a box I'd been saving for 2 weeks. The cast iron skillet seasoned and perfect went in last. The washer and dryer required Felix's expertise and a dolly he brought. He and his friend worked in silence, efficient and professional. Daphne kept the checklist. I packed my own room in 40 minutes. Everything I owned fit in boxes and 2 suitcases and a duffel bag that had been under my bed since a trip I'd taken alone to Portland 4 years ago, because it was the only vacation I could figure out how to take. The maple headboard and twin mattress I left behind. That furniture wasn't mine. It had been there since I was 16. I took my lamp. I took my bookshelves. I took the small rug I'd bought at a Sunday market 3 summers ago because I'd liked the pattern and it had seemed like a small claim to something. By 2 in the afternoon, the truck was full. I walked through the house one last time. The living room was a large, empty square. The dining room had only the chandelier my parents had hung before I was born. The kitchen had the stove, the built-in microwave, the refrigerator. I thought hard about the refrigerator. And the empty counters where the coffee maker and toaster and knife block had been. The refrigerator I left. It was $1,100, and it was a major appliance, and there is a limit to what I was willing to do. And also they needed somewhere to put their groceries when they got home. I left the refrigerator and the stove and the microwave and the shower curtain and the towel bars and all the things that were truly part of the house. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It said, "I've moved out. I've taken the things I paid for. I've paid first and last on a new apartment. I wish everyone a good trip, Wren." I locked the door with my key and put the key through the mail slot. The apartment was on the 2nd floor of a building with a green awning and a super named Harold who showed me where the laundry hookups were, with the air of a man who has explained laundry hookups many hundreds of times and is at peace with this. My apartment had south-facing windows, and I had known since I saw them the first time that the light in the afternoons would be good. Daphne and Felix and the unnamed friend carried everything up the stairs. It took 2 hours. The sectional fit against the south wall, and the light fell across it in long yellow rectangles, and I stood in the middle of my new living room and felt something I can only describe as the inside of a breath held for 8 years, finally releasing. We ordered pizza. We sat on the sectional in the half-assembled apartment and ate pepperoni pizza, and Daphne said, "You did it," and I said, "I did," and Felix said, "This couch is really comfortable," and I said, "I know, I picked it out." My mother called on day 4 of the trip. I saw her name on my phone and let it ring through to voicemail. She called again an hour later. I let that one go too. My sister texted, "Wren, what happened to the living room?" My father called from a number I didn't recognize. His cell had been broken for months and he'd been meaning to get it fixed, which I had also been meaning to remind him about, but apparently had not needed to since apparently I was the one who remembered such things. I texted my mother, "I've moved out. I'm fine. I'll talk when I'm ready." She texted back 17 things in rapid succession. I read them. I put my phone face down on the dining room table, my dining room table with 4 chairs arranged around it, and I made myself a cup of coffee in my own kitchen with my own coffee maker, and I sat down and watched the afternoon light move across the floor. My mother's texts ranged across several emotional registers: hurt, confusion, anger. A particular kind of wounded disbelief that I recognized as the voice she used when she'd decided she was the victim of something. There was one text that said, "I can't believe you would do this to your family," and one that said, "You know we were going to replace all that stuff anyway," and one that said simply, "The Hendersons asked about you." I did not respond to any of them. My sister called when they were back home. I answered that one. She was quieter than I expected. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. She asked if I was coming back. I said no. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "I'm sorry we didn't get you a ticket, Wren." And her voice had something in it that sounded real and tired, and I believed her, which is the complicated part. That I believe my sister is sorry, and I also believe she will borrow my sweaters and not return them until the end of time. "I know," I said. "I'm still not coming back." She said okay. She said she'd call me next week. I said okay. She said she'd call me next week. I said okay to that too. It has been 3 months now. My apartment has the sectional and the dining table and the coffee maker and the cast iron skillet, which I use every Sunday morning for eggs. I have a library 2 blocks away and a coffee shop 4 blocks away where the barista has started making my drink before I order it, which is the specific type of being known that I didn't realize I was missing. My mother and I have spoken 4 times. The conversations are careful and not entirely satisfying, and probably that is how it will be for a long time. She has not apologized exactly. She has said things adjacent to an apology, sentences that gesture toward acknowledging that perhaps the arrangements of the last 8 years were not entirely fair. I take what I can get. My father sent me a card, a physical card, handwritten, which surprised me because I had not known he still did such things. It said I should have said thank you more often. I hope the new place is good. I put it on my bookshelf. My brother texted me once to ask if I had the Wi-Fi password because the internet wasn't working, and I replied that the router was in my apartment now and he could call the internet company to set up new service, and he replied with a string of question marks, and I did not respond to those. My sister and I have dinner once a month. We don't talk about that summer mostly. We talk about her job. She has a new one, steadier than before. And my job and the book I'm reading and the restaurant we're sitting in. She never borrowed another sweater. I noticed this without mentioning it. The apartment is mine. Every piece of furniture in it is mine. The morning light comes through the south windows and lands on the sectional that I chose at 24 years old from a catalog my mother had been circling. And sometimes I sit with my coffee and I think about what that woman on the train said. They don't need you to save them. They just need you to be available to be needed. I spent 8 years being available. 3 months ago, I made myself unavailable. And I have to tell you, it is a strange and specific kind of quiet, living in rooms where everything belongs to you, where nothing was borrowed or assumed or taken without asking, where the coffee maker is exactly where you put it and the chairs are pulled exactly as far from the table as you prefer, and nobody has used the last of your coffee and left the empty bag in the cabinet as if the bag itself doesn't know it's empty. It is quiet in the way that something is quiet when it has finally, after a very long time, stopped making noise. I'm still learning what to do with that. But I'm learning it in my own apartment, at my own table, with my own coffee, in the good afternoon light. And that is, I think, exactly enough. I've thought a lot about what it actually costs to be the responsible one, not in dollars. Though I can tell you that number too because I wrote it down and it's more than most people would believe. I mean the other cost, the one that doesn't show up in any ledger. The cost of being so reliable, so available, so quietly present that the people around you stop noticing you're a person and start treating you like a system, like the internet connection. You only think about it when it goes out. That's what I was for, 8 years. I was the connection everyone used and nobody maintained. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. Nobody in my family is a villain. My mother is not a monster. My father is not cruel. My sister borrowed my sweaters and ate my food and genuinely, I believe, loves me. But love without awareness is just a feeling. It doesn't translate into fairness on its own. It doesn't automatically mean someone notices what you're carrying. You have to decide at some point whether you're going to keep waiting to be noticed or whether you're going to put the boxes down. I put the boxes down, and then I put them in a moving truck. What I've learned, really learned, not the kind of thing you say, but the kind you feel in your body when you're sitting alone at your own table in the morning, is that nobody is going to protect your life for you, not because they're bad people, just because they're busy living their own. If you make yourself infinitely available, people will use that availability infinitely. That's not a judgment, that's just how it works. The same quality that made me a good accountant, the ability to keep track of what's owed and what's missing, is the same quality I had to finally turn on my own situation. I was owed more than I was getting. Not from my family. Maybe relationships don't really work like invoices, but from myself, from my own choices, I owed myself a room where the furniture was mine, a morning where I could make coffee without wondering if someone had used the last of it, a life that was actually structured around what I needed, not just around what I could provide. The hard part isn't the moving truck. The hard part is accepting that you have to be the one to drive it. Nobody is going to arrive and tell you it's time to leave. Nobody is going to hand you the keys and say you've given enough now, go build something for yourself. You have to decide that alone, usually on a train, looking at your own tired reflection in a dark window. Daphne showed up with coffee and a checklist. Felix knew how to angle furniture through doorways, but I made the call. I signed the lease. I put the key through the mail slot. That's the whole thing, really. You can have people in your corner. And I hope you do. I hope you have a Daphne, but the decision itself is yours and only yours. Nobody else can want your freedom more than you do. 3 months in, My apartment still smells a little like the pizza we ate on moving day. The afternoon light still comes through the south windows, the way I knew it would when I first walked through. My cast iron skillet hangs on a hook by the stove, and I use it every Sunday, and it is exactly where I put it, and it will be there next Sunday too. That's what I traded 8 years for. That simple, stupid, extraordinary thing. It was worth it. It was worth every Tuesday I waited,